Hello and welcome to another video. This is the sixth episode of the story, where Naruto's journey through life after his battle at the Valley of End reveals what it truly means to be strong in a world filled with shinobi, conspiracy, and the concepts of good and evil. Please support us by liking and subscribing. Let's just get started. Found you, Zetsu pointed out redundantly as he fully emerged from the cave floor. Tsunade glared at him for a moment, then suddenly smiled. The impassive Zetsu was caught off guard. "Why are you dash?" he began to ask angrily, then decided it wasn't in his best interests. Or rather, Tsunade made that decision for him. BLAM. Went his body as it hurtled upwards through the ceiling of the underground cavern Tsunade and the others had bunkered down in. Swanda grinned even more ferally. "You may have the power of demons, but I'm still the Hokage around here, damn it," she shouted. "If you think you can just waltz into this village, wreck the place, and leave, you've got another thing coming." Tsunade leapt out of the cavern to meet Zetsu, who had by now fallen back to earth to land on 2 feet, that strange Venus flytrap twitching excitedly. The two combatants faced off in a curiously convenient mountain valley behind Konoha, complete with rocks, trees, and the occasional lake. Ah, but such power. I haven't felt a blow like that in ages. It seems the superhuman strength of the legendary Tsunade meets all expectations. Zetsu growled excitedly, rubbing his chin where Tsunade's fist and chakra collided. "Damn straight," Tsunade shot back as quite a large group of ninja jumped out of the cavern behind her. "Your orders, Tsunade-sama?" Niji asked, speaking for the very large group behind him. "Act as you see fit, Niji. You're all Jounin and Chunin now. If you feel that you all could fight, and another enemy presents himself, do so." "I do have one request, however," Tsunade said, looking directly at Hinata. "Hinata and Sasuke, go into Konoha and wait for Naruto's group to arrive. As soon as they do, bring them back here," she shouted, as she began to run towards Zetsu. "OSU." Hinata and Sasuke replied, disappearing. Tsunade nodded to herself in mid-charge, then smashed her fist into the mountain behind Zetsu, after he had dodged by a hair. The mountain, predictably, shook, and a mini rockslide resulted from Tsunade's titanic strike. Niji watched, awed, then pulled himself together and nodded. "Alright, what are we just standing here for? Attack! Split into the teams you know best and bring that bastard down." Naruto stood staring at Pain's crumpled form, for a moment at a loss for what to do. Fortunately, fate has a way of introducing the next path. The commotion from Tsunade's missed punch reached Naruto's keen ears, and he started. "Naruto-kun, what's wrong?" Kira asked worriedly. Naruto shook his head. "Nothing. Didn't you hear that noise? Someone's fighting in the mountains," Naruto said urgently. Haku nodded. "I got it too, hey, look!" he shouted suddenly, noticing 2 figures in the distance. Naruto turned to the direction Haku indicated and lost his breath. There, in the distance, were 2 of the people Naruto was worried the most over. "Hinata-chan." "Sasuke," he screamed, and Gaara wondered if it was possible to convey more relief. He watched as the 2 figures drew in closer. Sasuke stopped a few feet away, but Hinata kept moving and hit Naruto so hard that if it was anyone else they would have been bowled over. Naruto simply reacted by enveloping his love in a bone-crunching embrace. "Naruto-kun. Thank goodness you're here," Hinata said breathlessly. "We've got quite a situation in the mountains," Sasuke clarified. "Hokage-sama is fighting this weird plant guy, and we think the rest of Akatsuki is close by. Come with us, maybe we can all surround that lone member while he's still fighting." And he turned to run. Naruto, however, did not follow, and Sasuke turned to face him. "Naruto, your questions will have to wait until after Akatsuki is dead. For now, get a move on," he shouted. Naruto shook himself and nodded. Hinata tugged him forward, and he grinned half-heartedly, giving her a peck on the cheek and signaling his team to follow. Sasuke led them through the trees behind the Hokage mansion until they entered a narrow mountain crevice. He motioned for them to continue single file, which they did until they emerged into a very open area where an admittedly expected surprise awaited the Konoha ninja. "Yeah, it's about time you showed up, Uzumaki Naruto," Kakuzu drawled as unbuttoned his cloak and let it fall off his stitched-together body. "I'd been looking forward to this little wait a sec," he broke off, examining Naruto's friends. "It seems he found some interesting allies," Conan said softly. "There are 4 Jinchuriki against just us 2. "Well, that won't matter," Kakuzu replied, flexing his arms as if experimentally. "We can dash," but he was interrupted when a large quantity of sand erupted from the ground beneath him. However, he simply jumped backwards a few feet. The sand responded by recoiling and spearing itself towards him, catching Kakuzu on the arm, which was then torn off. "Save your words," Gaara drawled. "It is time for you to die." Kakuzu laughed as he extended his black wire stitching and reattached his arm. "Oh, there will be death, and it may even be me, but you'll have to kill me quite a few times before I stop killing you." Naruto finally snapped out of his mini-funk. "Kira, you and I will take the woman, Gaara and Haku take Kakuzu. Sasuke and Hinata-chan, get back to Tsunade-chan and let her know that we have engaged 2 members of Akatsuki and will join her when cleanup is done." Sasuke turned to leave, but Hinata was a bit more reluctant. "Naruto-kun, why can't we stay here to help you?" Hinata pleaded, though she already knew the answer. Naruto smiled sadly. "It's not gonna be safe here for much longer," he replied. "Please help Tsunade-chan, and I'll go to you as soon as I can, okay?" Hinata nodded. "I love you, Naruto-kun." Naruto nodded. "I know, I'll come back, Hinata-chan. I promise." She nodded, and with a small smile took off after Sasuke to return to their Hokage's side. Naruto in turn faced Kira and tilted his head towards Conan. "Let's go, Kira-chan." He closed his eyes, concentrating. When he reopened his eyes they were a dark red, and his hands became claw-like while his whisker marks became more defined. "My, you're escalating this fight rather quickly," Conan observed. Summoning such chakra already dash, "Shut up," Naruto commanded, interrupting Conan's little speech. "You have no idea who I am or what I can do, or who any of my friends are or what we can do. All you've ever cared about is the demons inside of us. You think the information you have is all well and good, but in reality you have no idea of what it is to be a Jinchuriki," Naruto growled, spitting out the last word like it poisoned his tongue. "Your words betray your ignorance," Kira added as she converted her chakra to its demonic nature. "Naruto and I no longer have to summon a demonic chakra. It is a part of us just as our bijou are. We are no longer human, yet neither are we demon. It is a transformation all Jinchuriki undergo which turns them into half-demons. Naruto, Gaara, Haku, and I are all half-demons, no longer members of the human race. This is our burden, you stupid little bitch, and you will die for trying to use us." Kira shouted as her canines elongated into fangs. As one they rushed the black-haired woman. Conan simply drew 2 slips of paper out of the folds of her cloak and flung them like shuriken towards Kira and Naruto. As he charged, Naruto saw with his Sharingan that they each had a certain nature of chakra infused into them. "Split!" he yelled suddenly, realizing what those pieces of paper were about to do. Kira reacted instantaneously, leaping away to the right while Naruto extended his hand to the left, shooting out a tail of red-orange chakra which dug into the ground served as an anchor, which he used to pull himself away from the missile headed for him. Into the ground, where it disappeared beneath the earth, leaving behind a small slash mark where it entered. "Unbelievable," Naruto said. "Did you shape the chakra for those papers when you pulled them out of your cloak, or were they prepared?" Kira's eyes widened as she realized what Naruto was implying. Conan smiled softly. "I molded that chakra when I pulled the paper out. It's a precaution I take when fighting against a Dojutsu that can see chakra. For anyone else that would be impossible to mold 2 different chakras at once from one hand, but for me it isn't a problem. She smiled wider, seeming a little less stable. No one can match me for chakra control. Naruto grinned viciously, baring his fangs. My girlfriend could. She's prettier than you, too. Conan's grin became a grimace. Clever, but I doubt that. And she threw a few more papers in Naruto's direction so quickly they blurred through the air. Naruto disappeared just as quickly, leaving the papers to wreak random elemental havoc on the ground where he once was. Searching for an opening, he threw some kunai of his own. However, Conan simply drew forth a single small sheet of paper and slashed at the kunai. Noticing the wind chakra molded into the sheet, Naruto was not surprised when the missiles were shredded in midair to drop to the ground in pieces. Cursing, he formed the ram seal and gathered his chakra. Conan did not have time to savor her brief advantage as Kira came from behind. Gotcha, she crowed. Bet you're terrible at Taijit dash, but Kira was cut off as Conan's elbow connected with Kira's stomach. She doubled over, and Conan followed up with a vicious kick that came too fast for Kira to block, let alone dodge. She flew back from whence she came with a sickening thud. Conan straightened with a toss of her raven hair. I'm Akatsuki, foolish child. You think I have a weak area in my talents as a kunoichi? Then she stilled as she felt Naruto gather a large amount of chakra. She turned to face 9 tails of his hellish corporeal chakra hovering above his body. It doesn't matter if you don't, Naruto pointed out. As he said so, the tails quivered faster. It doesn't matter, because it's not how one uses their weaknesses, it's how one uses their strengths. Kira watched from the ground as the tails arched behind his head to poise for striking, like the tails of a scorpion. Demonic taijutsu, kitsune tail. Naruto growled, charging. Conan nodded, pulling forth 8 slips of paper, 4 in each hand held between her fingers. Naruto noticed that the chakra pushed into these was different than any other element she had used so far. Before Naruto could reach her, she whipped through a few seals of her own, ending on snake. Cover, she yelled, and the papers whirled around her hands before covering them like a glove. She blocked Naruto's first strike with ease, the tail actually being halted by Conan's paper-covered hands. Kira attempted to attack again as well, calling upon her demonic nature to increase the speed and accuracy of her unique taijutsu. Conan was pressed hard and fast, unable to make an attack on her own under the combined onslaught of Kira and Naruto. They worked unusually well together, ducking while the other jumped in for a strike, weaving while the other dodged, trying to create openings in Conan's defense. Kakuzu stared at the pair who had been ordered to take him. Well, let's get this over with. I can't believe I'm fighting for no profit, though, Kakuzu drawled. Gaara nodded. I've heard of you, now that I think about it. Kakuzu, you're that bounty hunter, aren't you? Gaara asked curiously, showing no emotion on his insomnia-affected face. Yeah, that's right, Kakuzu replied. Strange black threads appeared to writhe underneath his stitched-together skin. I've been around long enough to have fought the first Hokage, and have brought in more bounties than any other man alive. You're still alive? Haku asked innocently. But surely you're older than Konoha's Hokage, right? No one could have possibly lived since the time of the founding of Konoha as you claim and still appear so young. Kakuzu laughed. You're a strange one, he replied. See these faces on my body, he asked, indicating what Gaara and Haku had taken to be masks stitched onto his torso. They represent the hearts I've absorbed to prolong my life. I've got 4 right now, but I have a feeling yours will make excellent contributions to my longevity. Gaara shook his head. Your twisted existence ended the moment Naruto requested that my partner and I take care of the obstruction you posed to our advancement. As he declared the unfortunate Akatsuki member's fate, sand trickled from his gourd and revolved around him like a shield. All the while, he showed no emotion. Ah, come on Gaara-kun. No evil laugh, or proclamation of goodness. Do you feel any emotions at all? Haku asked playfully, pretending to ignore the imposing threat before them and turning to directly face Gaara. I feel hunger, Gaara admitted, catching on to Haku's game. Haku mock frowned. What about smiling? Don't you smile? Haku pressed. Gaara shook his head. What the fuck? Kakuzu shouted. I'll fucking kill you, he yelled, reaching back and launching his right arm at the pair. It impaled both of them. Black threads shot through their bodies, displacing their blood with a merry splat. Then their blood and their bodies began to melt away. Gaara collapsed in a pile of sand, while Haku's form gave a merry push and dissolved into water. Kakuzu leapt back just in time to avoid the two bodies of sand that Gaara directed from the ground to trap Kakuzu in a pincer motion. Spared of that agony, he was then treated to the claws of Haku. He fell from the sky like a bullet, bringing his hands in the shape of claws down on Kakuzu's head. Gaara noticed that from his fingertips extended needles of what appeared to be ice. An explosion of dust and smoke resulted from Haku's skydive. From that cloud came the sound of more fighting, then Haku flew backwards with his arms covering his face. He skidded to a stop next to Gaara, who calmly waited until the air cleared to reveal a very pissed-off Kakuzu. You came very close to getting one of my hearts, Gaki, Kakuzu growled. It seems you can mold your chakra to be permanently demonic. Fine, he spat out, whipping through some seals and ending on Tiger. Katan, Karyu Enden, he howled, and one of the faces on his chest expelled a massive fireball. Before it completely left his body, Kakuzu was forming another technique. Futon, Howling Gust. He shouted again, using his own head to launch the ninjutsu. The result whipped the fireball, which was now a few meters away, into a firestorm of wind and flame. Holy shit! Haku yelled, forming a one-handed seal and pushing his left palm forward. A sheet of ice appeared in front of him and he leapt into it as the firestorm passed him by. Handy, Gaara thought as he solidified the sand from his gourd around him in a sphere. After he felt the chakra from the jutsu dissipate, he formed his trademark eye of sand outside the sphere. And now you'll attack from that sphere of sand. Stupid, I've already fought you, remember? Kakuzu scoffed. Gaara, in the safety and privacy of his sphere, smiled widely. Sensing the danger, Kakuzu brought his left arm around and blocked Haku's two-footed kick to his right. Releasing the threads in his right arm, he pushed it under his outstretched left and out at Haku. Haku grinned, turning in midair and bringing his feet in so that when Kakuzu's threads reached him, he actually pressed his feet against them and pushed himself backwards into his mirror of ice, which he had used to sneak up on Kakuzu. As he disappeared, the threads smashed into and through the ice. Haku reappeared next to Gaara's sphere. No way I can use my ice prison jutsu against him, Haku thought. Then he was forced to leap away as the earth around him rose from the ground. Kakuzu scowled as his attempt to spear the young ninja failed. Gaara, come on and get a move on. Haku yelled as he was once again forced to jump away by the relentless attacks of Kakuzu's black threads. Geez, how much chakra does this guy think he can afford to waste? Not even we have unlimited chakra. Haku protested as he dodged the chakra-charged body parts of Kakuzu. Then the attack stopped in mid-lunge. Haku froze as he looked at his assailant. A large spear made seemingly out of sand protruded from Kakuzu's left shoulder. The head was enormous, covered in red markings. Kakuzu coughed. Spear of Shikaku, Gaara said tonelessly. Behind him, his spear of sand collapsed. When did you leave your shield? Kakuzu asked as the mask Gaara impaled fell off with a splat of blood. I was never in it for long, Gaara replied. The minute you began to attack Haku, I left the spear entirely and went underground. It took so long because for me to move underground I need to convert the soil to sand. I can't use Doton techniques. Kakuzu chuckled. Well, you managed to kill one of my hearts. Congratulations, for more to go, he said mockingly. Strange black and white chakra began to seep out of Kakuzu's body. But I'm afraid I can't let you take any more. Gaara glared. So you're finally brining it out. Kakuzu laughed. Finally, an emotion. Then he began to attack anew, this time by using 3 of his limbs at once, always balancing on at least one hand or foot at a time. Every now and then a mask on his body would belch out a random fire, water, or lightning technique, often one of the more powerful variants. Shit. How the hell does he do so many things at once? Haku asked Gaara as he dodged a dragon of water, flipping around to aim his next technique at the Akatsuki member. Haku threw his palm towards the watery remains of the expired jutsu. Needles of ice formed out of the water which Haku directed towards Kakuzu. They were met by a limb of black threads. The four-tailed monkey, Saru, Gaara replied, trying to think of a way to get at Kakuzu's hearts without turning the valley into a sandy wasteland. Unfortunately, this eliminated most of his best techniques. That would explain his ridiculous dexterity and ability to do different things with all his limbs at once, he added, dodging Kakuzu's other leg and arm at the last minute as they tore through the shield of sand which automatically defended him. I really need to find some way to improve this thing. And the battle raged. And oh, how it raged. Konan had finally broken away from Naruto and Kira. Despite the odds against her, she had managed to slice away 3 of Naruto's tails, though she admitted there wasn't much she could do to the girl. Her taijutsu was simply too exotic to counter with the added pressure the Kyubi carrier was putting on. So she spun where she stood, becoming thousands of pieces of paper which fluttered and flapped in the wake of the pirouette. Naruto grinned. Katon, Gokakyu no Jutsu, he howled, expelling a modest fireball from his mouth. The resulting flames completely enveloped the papers. Got her, Kira said exultantly. So she was shocked when out of the wake of the fireball came a pair of papers. Before she could get out of the way completely, they sliced through her left arm. Kira cried out more out of surprise than pain, and the rest of the papers swirled together in a mini tornado before vanishing altogether. Kira! Naruto shouted. Kyuso! What the hell? He shouted. Do you have any idea how many times some baka has tried that? Conan's voice replied, seemingly from nowhere. Before I inhabit the paper, I change my chakra to its demonic nature, allowing me to regenerate the wounds I get instantly. Naruto shifted his head to the side to allow a single sheet to fly by. Before it passed him completely, he caught it and brought it directly in front of his eyes. Reveal, he muttered, writing a kanji on the paper. You possess the 5-tailed snake, Orochi, correct? Naruto asked, turning around to face Konan, who now appeared to be emulating a paper bunshin. Those eyes are impressive, Konan admitted, knowing they left her at a disadvantage. But they won't make a difference in the fight to come. Naruto grinned. Baka, you've only recently had a demon planted within you. Do you have any idea what long-term effects there will be? What the effect on a Kekai Genkai might be? On my particular Kekai Genkai, the one from which the Byakugan and, by extension, the Sharingan come from? Konan shook her head. So what, those eyes are like the other 2 combined? Naruto shook his head. Originally it had its own unique set of abilities. For me, it's a combination of all 3, though my ability to predict movements and copy jutsus is nowhere near Uchiha's. But I can still do it. Konan grinned and formed the seal of the tiger. The paper Naruto was holding exploded, launching him backwards. Kyuso, he mumbled as he picked himself off the ground. I didn't think that was possible, he said rhetorically as he got up, greeted by the sight of dull white chakra enveloping Kanan. Curiously, all of her papers were affected as well. You 2 together are strong, but not enough to defeat me, Konan declared. Green chakra leaked out of Kira's form as a thin tail began to form from behind. Naruto stood tall and proud as he ripped all the chakra he had stored in its demonic form from his chakra circulatory system. His hair became a blonde mixed with dark crimson-orange highlights, and his Sharingan changed from blue with a silver pupil to dark red with a blue pupil. 7 tails exploded out of his back and 2 limbs of chakra grew down from his arms and extended a few feet further out of his hands. "You foolish woman," Naruto growled, and it appeared that his voice was also affected by the amount of demonic chakra in his system. "You have no idea what kind of power the Kyubi no Kitsune possessed while he roamed the mortal world and beyond." Kira shuddered. The handsome blonde she had only recently met had become a fearsome creature of death. She looked down at her own body. Her hands had become claws and her fangs had elongated even further, and her chakra came very close to Naruto's. But the difference wasn't really in terms of power or form, unless you counted the corporeal chakra that was one of Kyubi's trademarks. No, it was the massive murderous intent that the chakra emanated. Conan realized that she was about to die. "This is completely ridiculous," she yelled, losing what shreds of control she had clung to. "I am a member of Akatsuki, notorious for being composed entirely of S-class criminals capable of bringing villages to their knees. How is it that you two will defeat me so easily? How is that you are so Kami-sama damned powerful?" she screamed. Naruto glared. "I was born into suffering, born of suffering, born by suffering. My life, my existence, was suffering. I never had a family, I never had friends, I never had an existence to call my own, aside from the labels demon and monster that were given to me by my own home, a home which had once praised my family as the defenders of Konoha, the home which my father died to save, which I saved by bearing burden to the terrible force of nature and hell that was the Kyubi no Kitsune, nine-tailed demon fox and lord." Kira's eyes widened as she learned of Naruto's past, which he continued to relate in that demonic growl. "However, I did not die. I found friends, acceptance in someone who used to see for the Kyubi but understood that I was no different from him. I earned my friends, rather than finding them. Everyone I have ever met, their acceptance it was earned through my sweat and my blood, and by spilling the blood of others. I fought for this village, defending it from a maddened Gaara. I died for this village in an effort to return a once insane Uchiha Sasuke from the grip of Orochimaru team. I brought my village its Godame Hokage. And then, I trained for 3 years under the legendary Sannin Jiraiya so that I could rid the shinobi world of the likes of your organization." He took a breath. "All of this was done for one reason, and one reason alone, to protect my precious people." He leveled his right tail so that it pointed at Conan's face. "And you destroyed my village, killed my precious people, and you wonder how I am strong?" Naruto questioned. "True strength comes from the desire to protect the ones precious to you, to fight for them, bleed for them, and if necessary, die for them so that they might live," Naruto intoned, and as he said those words his voice softened to its normal tones. Kira felt a breeze blow through her very soul, as if Naruto's words carried some inner power and strength. Conan nodded, regaining control of her emotions. "Believe it or not, Uzumaki Naruto, I understand where your strength comes from." Then she looked him in the eye. "But you have no idea where my strength comes from," she shouted, spinning in place and launching a stream of papery projectiles as Naruto and Kira. Kira ducked and dodged with all her grace and agility, slicing and blocking the sheets before they could cut her again. After setting her feet properly, she launched herself into a dash towards Conan, cutting at the never-ending stream of white as she went. Naruto simply walked towards the Akatsuki member. The concentration required to control the tails was so great, it limited any other action. "I guess this would be my weakness. Someone like Kakashi or Itachi would be able to exploit it with their ninjutsu." However, Conan's barrage was destroyed by his tails of chakra, which whipped and shredded anything that approached. So she stopped moving completely, halting all motion so that her paper hung in the air. "Detonate," she yelled. "Shit," Naruto said, before his world was engulfed in flames. Right before the explosion, he saw something white flash towards Kira. "Suetun, Suryuden no Jutsu." Kakuzu shouted, and his remaining left shoulder mask began to belch forth the third water dragon of the fight. The other two had wrought havoc on Haku and Gaara. But this time Haku was ready. Using the speed of his bijou, he appeared to teleport to the spot right in front of Kakuzu's line of fire. In reality, he sprinted there. Reaching one hand out, he injected a large amount of his own chakra into the head of the water dragon as it emerged, manipulating the chakra in the way Haku knew best. The dragon was turned to ice, which Haku shattered. The impact and shockwaves traveled into Kakuzu's body, as ice shards and waves of force battered the heart stored underneath the mask. As Kakuzu coughed up some blood, Haku jumped away, breathing heavily. The whole process of getting to Kakuzu and freezing the dragon had taken less than a few seconds, but an enormous amount of chakra. Kakuzu laughed. Getting tired, boy? Running out of chakra? But he was forced to leap away as Gaara sent his sand towards Kakuzu in another effort to crush him. Futile, Gaara observed as Kakuzu fell for the trap. The minute he jumped back, Gaara brought forth his contingency. A very large claw attached to an even larger hand erupted out of the ground behind Kakuzu and grabbed his entire body. Boom! Went the hand as Kakuzu's black threads exploded outwards. Gaara, however, refused to let his prey go. Reacting with inhuman swiftness and ruthlessness that surprised even him, he had the hand snatch at Kakuzu's retreated back with its claws, gathering the necessary chakra. Desert coffin, he shouted, constricting every grain of sand in the arm simultaneously. The result of Gaara's quick reactions lay on the ground in a bloody heap, 2 masks. 2 less hearts. Kyuso, Kakuzu growled. Then he coughed up blood as Gaara made yet another red-marked spear and grimly drove it directly into Kakuzu's chest. Please, Haku said cheerfully now that victory was assured. You didn't really think you could win against the 2 of us? I mean, sure, you're strong, but he was cut off as Kakuzu's body exploded outward, black threads flying, seemed to impale. Despite Gaara's efforts to dodge, close combat was never his specialty and the threads caught him in the right shoulder. Gah! Gaara yelled as they were yanked out, Kakuzu being unable to support them nor himself. Hiya! Haku yelled as he dove at Kakuzu, impaling him with Sanbon needles of ices. Kakuzu gurgled and moved no more. Damn! Brats! He said weakly as strange chakra began to dissolve his body. Gaara! Haku shouted to his companion. Gaara, how is it? Is it gonna be okay? He asked worriedly. Gaara coughed up some blood. Yeah, I'll be fine. If it wasn't for you Konoha ninja wounding me for the first time all those years ago, I probably wouldn't be able to control the urge to kill. But now, and he looked over to Naruto and Kira fighting amidst a swirl of paper. Haku grinned. He's something else, isn't he? Gaara nodded. Then the remaining battle between Kira and Naruto disappeared in a flash of flame and noise. Naruto coughed and banished his chakra, shaking a little from the exertion of controlling so much power. Then his now blue Sharingan widened as he saw what Konan had done. Relying on her regeneration and speed, she had using the ridiculously powerful diversion to take Kira as a hostage, paper poised at the young redhead's throat as she stood behind her. You think you know the deal, Naruto, Konan said viciously. But in reality, these situations are far more futile than they seem. And without further hesitation or preamble, she drew the paper across Kira's throat. Kira-chan. Naruto howled, launching a kunai at Konan, who simply let Kira's bleeding form drop to the ground and used both her palms to capture the speeding missile between them. Foolish boy she began once again, then stopped, eyes widening. The kunai's 3 prongs glittered in the sunlight inches from her nose. No, she whispered. Then she lurched forward as Naruto inserted Makai into and through her heart. The blade began to glow blue again, and Konan screamed. My chakra. Aughit sits burning up. What are you doing? Konan screamed as the blade burned her demonic chakra from the inside. This must have been what Busho was talking about all those years ago, Naruto thought. He mentioned the blade was no ordinary katana, no wonder Dad was able to fight the Kyubi. He yanked the blade out, still unwilling to cause anyone unnecessary pain, even though they were his enemies. Conan slumped to the ground, blood forming a pool around her. She made no move to stop the blow. "I feel so empty," she murmured softly. Then she collapsed and was no more. Naruto stared at the corpse for a minute as off-whitish chakra began to dissolve the body, then remembered something that made his blood run cold. "Kira!" he yelled as he sprinted to the crimson-haired Kunoichi. But when he got there, it seemed that she was beyond repair. Blood flowed freely from the wound in her neck. Conan had cut straight to the jugular. "Kyoso!" Naruto yelled, lamenting his lack of talent in the area of medical ninjutsu. So it was to his great and overwhelming pleasant surprise when Kira sat up suddenly, the wound healing so quickly Naruto could see the skin and muscle knitting together. How, he wondered aloud, sure that no one other than himself possessed such regenerative capability, though he seemed to forget Tsunade's creation jutsu and the much more recent example of the regeneration of the white snake demon. "Haven't you heard, Naruto-kun?" Kira said softly, for now she was completely bereft of chakra and her throat still burned. "Cats have 9 lives," and she collapsed into his arms. Naruto smiled at her unconscious form, then picked her up and secured her in a piggyback. "Good to see you haven't lost your touch," Gaara said, observing the almost gone corpse of Conan the Origami Kunoichi. Naruto shook his head. "It was a wash. Those fights shouldn't have lasted so long with 2 of our key, 2 bijou containers teaming up against 1, Naruto said, struggling with words that he could deal with saying without feeling like slandering himself. Then his mouth dropped. "Gaara, your shoulder," he said anxiously, pointing at the offending wound. Gaara shook his head. "It's fine." And that was all. "We still need to regroup with the survivors," Haku pointed out. Naruto nodded. "Come on, there's still a few more of these bastards to deal with." And he turned, Kira on his back, towards where Sasuke and Hinata had gone. "Hinata-chan, Sasuke, Sakura, Bachan, everyone hang in there." Tsunade and Zetsu rocked the canyon around them with enough destructive force that even Niji showed outward signs of being slightly phased. The rest of them weren't so subtle. "Holy shit!" Chuji yelled after Tsunade picked herself out of a hole in the side of a cliff, brushing off debris from her shoulders and forming chakra so that her hand cackled with electricity. She paused, noticing the small crowd of ninja watching the battle. "What are you, spectators? What the hell have you been training to do your entire life?" Tsunade bellowed, louder than ever before, surprising even Sakura, her apprentice, with her ferocity. She formed a quick seal sequence and slammed her hands into the ground. The ground exploded around and Zetsu found himself encased in a rocky prison, buying Tsunade some time. She breathed deeply and rounded on her soldiers. "You have been trained your entire life to be ninja. Up until the past few days you've been led to believe that even the life of a ninja can have a sense of normalcy. Get a mission, go assassinate some asshole or escort some big shot, come home with barely your lives, get paid, and do it all over again. Well, that's a bunch of bullshit. Your generation hasn't had a shit's worth of an idea of what a real war is." "Well, kiddies, welcome to war," Tsunade said. "Damn," Sakura said. "That was out of character." "That was an understatement," Shikamaru drawled, shaken by the Hokage's outburst. "People die in war. You've seen the bodies, Genma, Kiba. They all knew what it meant to be a ninja of Konoha, to possess the will of fire. They knew that we are in a war, and that means your life is on the line, all the time. So get moving. We are all that stands between this asshole and Konoha's utter annihilation." Tsunade yelled. Zetsu chose that moment to send his roots to return the favor to Tsunade, having escaped the rock prison a while ago. The root caught Tsunade by surprise and ripped her arm off at the shoulder. At least, it would have if Hinata hadn't sliced it into little stick-sized pieces with her chakra beams. Ino's eyes went wide. "That was really hot," she said, awed. Hinata blushed. Lee shook his head. "It was, But that was nothing. Watch this, he shouted. Motioning to Tenten and Niji, he dashed in front of Tsunade toward Zetsu, who began to form a seal sequence. Niji and Tenten fell into pace behind their fuzzy-browed companion, arms trailing behind. Mukatan, Forest Creation Jutsu, Zetsu said. Immediately a forest began to grow from the ground, exploding out of the earth with incredible destructive power. This did nothing to deter Lee, Niji, or Tenten, all of whom unleashed their attacks with practiced ease. Zetsu found himself under attack from razor-sharp wind chakra, a seemingly endless barrage of weapons released from an oversized scroll, and a green blur. As they hurtled towards the Akatsuki member, they noticed that he had begun to glow with a dull off-white chakra. Moving with incredible speed, he shot an arm out and formed a wooden shield from the trees which now surrounded the battleground. While he used this to block the weapons, his other arm caught Lee's foot inches from his face. Swinging the boy around, he flung him away, then dashed off himself, allowing Niji's air palms to fly harmlessly by. He was given no chance to rest as Chuji, Ino, and Shikamaru took up the offensive. Shikamaru sunk into a shadow while Chuji simply roared and charged, enlarging his hands and swinging them through trees, where Ino simply darted between them, hurtling kunai at the flytrap-encased ninja. "My turn," Sasuke said quietly as Ino's kunai were slapped away, along with her. He nodded towards Hinata, who caught the gesture and understood what Sasuke was planning. He ran through the trees towards Zetsu, who was trying to fight Shikamaru as he appeared and reappeared out of the shadows. Seeing Sasuke approach, he winked, retreating into the darkness. Ducking, Chuji's form flew over his head and he snapped his hands downward. Two Chidori sprang to life in his palms and he began to run circles around Zetsu. "What's he doing?" Zetsu muttered. "Yeah, what?" he said as if in reply. Then they were answered as Sasuke began to rip through the newly grown trees, which began to fall around him, some of them quite close for comfort. Zetsu smiled and began to weave through the trees, yellow eyes tracking Sasuke's movement. As he cut through one tree, he suddenly found himself hurtling through the air. Looking back, he saw Zetsu grinning, a new piece of the woods jutting upward from the ground. He landed on his feet, glaring in mock anger at the Akatsuki member. "You see, normal ninja cannot compete with me. There is not a power in this world that can defeat me like this. No one." Zetsu howled. "Half." Zetsu lurched forward, blood spewing from his mouth as incredible pain spiked into his stomach, but the attack wasn't over. Hinata pummeled away, forcing chakra spike after chakra spike into Zetsu's body from behind, striking the heart, liver, kidneys, and lungs, destroying them systematically with precision that scared the shit out of Niji, who watched in awe. "I think I can do that," he thought warily, "but that's really scary." Zetsu let loose one more spurt of blood after Hinata finished, breathing heavily. He did a mental check of his vitals. "You bitch," he said softly. "Yeah," he said, again as if in reply. "Bitch," then he slumped forward to take a dirt nap in his new forest. "Shit, Hinata-san just killed a member of Akatsuki." Tenten shouted. Tsunade huffed. "I would like to think that I helped." Then she smiled. "But credit for the kill goes to Hinata. Good work, Naruto would be proud." "But how?" Ino said confusedly. This time, Shino responded. It was the first time he spoke since witnessing Kiba's death. A true battle between ninja is not a battle at all. It should all be over after a few seconds, after which one ninja should have quickly and efficiently dispatched his opponent. There is, in all honesty, no honor in a fight between two or more ninja. Surprise, deceit, cunning, strength, stealth, all are used in conjunction to deliver a death blow. Battles are prolonged because one ninja counters the death blow of his opponent. Every time you attack your opponent, if your attack is successful, your opponent should either die or be placed in a situation where he can no longer win. Everyone stared at him. He bowed his head. Tsunade walked over and clapped him on the shoulder. Well spoken, was all she said. Shino nodded. Hey! A voice yelled. What the hell happened here? Hinata looked up with such joy that Sasuke, who walked over just in time to hear the end of Shino's speech, thought she would explode with emotion. Surveying the carnage, he could understand the blonde dobe's outburst. The little mountain valley which they had just torn up was littered with fallen trees, upright trees, splintered trees, a lot of shattered rocks, and one dead Akatsuki member. What do you think? Sasuke said with a sniff as Naruto walked over, Gaara, Kira, and Haku bringing up the rear. Naruto grinned at his best friend's belligerence. Naruto-kun! Hinata yelled, embracing her boyfriend. Hinata-chan, Naruto said softly, squeezing her gently and resting his chin on her head. He met eyes with Tsunade. What's the situation? He asked calmly, though his Sharingan flickered red as he asked the ultimate question. Tsunade sighed. Many ninja have fallen. I'd say about as much casualties as the Sand Sound attack, half our forces. God damn it, Naruto cursed. He took stock of his friends, a small smile forming on his face. Where are the rest of the ninja? He pressed. The rest of our Jounin and Chunin, plus all of our Genin are guarding the civilians, Tsunade replied. Not even I know where they are at this point, but they are definitely safe. She in turn examined Naruto's battered friends. Kazekage Gaara, it is good to see you alive and mostly well, Tsunade said formally. Gaara smiled slightly. Mostly well, that's one way to put it. It is good to meet the legendary Sannin Tsunade, he replied, bowing. Tsunade in turn placed green glowing hands on the wound in Gaara's shoulder. Thank you, he said gratefully when the deed was done. Tsunade smiled in reply and moved to Haku. You must be Haku, Tsunade said. He nodded, grinning. Nice RA dash, he began, but was silenced by Naruto's foot slamming down on his own. When the hell did you go from being a quiet, reserved kid to a hormone-driven smartass? Naruto whispered. Haku grinned sheepishly. Tsunade shook her head, glowering at the boy. I'll let that slide since you helped Naruto out. Konoha will always be grateful. Haku smiled sincerely and bowed. And you? Tsunade said, moving on to Kira, who was doing her best to hide behind Naruto's presence, are someone I have never heard of, nor seen, but your identity is as plain as your green eyes and red hair. Kira's eyes widened and she tried to hide her forehead protector. Tsunade noticed this and sighed. I don't care that you're from rock. Kira froze, bringing her hand down and meeting Tsunade's gaze. You don't? Tsunade shook her head, and now she was grinning. No, I don't. In fact, I'm glad to see that Iwagakure hasn't been brainwashing their children to kill Konoha Nin on sight, let alone help them take on an organization of S-class criminals. Kira smiled with relief. Anything to help Naruto-kun. Naruto grinned. So you'll stay in Konoha, right? He said half serious, half joking. Kira laughed. For a while, she replied seriously, causing Naruto to laugh as well until he realized that she was serious. He looked her in the eye. To help my new friends rebuild their village, Baka, she said in response to his incredulous look. He shook his head in disbelief. Anyways, your help is greatly appreciated. However, for now we have unfinished business to attend to, Tsunade said sternly. Naruto looked puzzled. The 10th member of Akatsuki, Baka. Sakura screeched. Geez, you're such a klutz. After blowing Sakura a raspberry, Naruto nodded. I have no idea who he is or what he looks like, though. I don't Jiraiya ever got that information before he died. Tsunade shook her head. He managed to get his defining characteristic. The remaining member wears an orange mask with a black spiral centered on only one eye hole. That's good to know, however, I'd like to avoid fighting him if we can. We're all pretty beat from the last few battles. How many Jounin do we have guarding the civies right now? Naruto asked. About 54. Why? Tsunade asked, confused. Then she smiled. Smart plan, Naruto-kun. Wait, I don't get it, Haku chimed in. Since there's only one enemy left, he can't pose that much of a threat to the civilians, but he's still a threat. So we'll pull most of the Jounin from the guard, but not all, and all of us will find this last guy and force him to surrender, Shikamaru said lazily. Naruto laughed. I was thinking we could gang up and beat him up, but Shikamaru's idea is better. Shikamaru sighed and looked at the clouds as everyone groaned. Naruto, make sure you give Shikamaru a good job when you're Hokage, Tsunade warned. You'll need him to help you do tasks you can't measure up to, like calculating tips at restaurants. Hey! Naruto yelled as everyone found humor in the aftermath of the terrible war for their home. Then Ino realized what the Hokage had just said. Wait a sec, Hokage-sama, did you say, when Naruto's Hokage? Ino asked, eyes widening. Niji, Tenten, and Lee, instead of turning to congratulate Naruto, crouched down low and covered their ears. What the Chuji began, but then stopped as his ears exploded. WSH. The fires of youth prevail once again, Naruto Kun. Lee shouted exuberantly, and then everyone understood. Congratulations, Naruto, Niji said faintly. Even though he had prevented the full force of the vocal assault, his head was still ringing. Yeah, congratulations. Tenten shouted, hugging an embarrassed Naruto. Wait till I tell Dad. Hey, hey! Naruto said, raising his hands to ward off any other compliments. We've still got work to, and I'm still just a jounin. He looked to Tsunade. What are your orders? He asked plaintively. Oh please, you've never respected my authority, why start now? Tsunade replied playfully, though a slight tinge of red appeared on her cheeks. Fall into tight formation behind my lead, we'll head for the mountains and gather the ninja for a search. Toby sat atop the valley of the end, foot tapping rhythmically against Uchiha Madara's head. He hummed tunelessly, fingering the orange spiral mask that covered his face. In a fit of introspection he yanked it off, exposing his empty left eye socket. He reached a hand up to it, gently feeling the still tender skin around the now scarred-over hole, then abruptly replaced the mask firmly and stood. Running a hand through his hair, he thought briefly of the village he had just ordered to be annihilated. In truth, there was no real reason other than Konoha being geographically convenient to conquer after grass, but after he realized that the remaining 4 Jinchuriki were to be gathered there, he had ordered the full force of Akatsuki thrown at the village hidden in the leaves. And yet, he said aloud as he performed half tiger, half horse, and half dog with his left hand and passed it over his Akatsuki ring, over which popped a hazy blur in the air, that seems to have been a mistake. In the blur were supposed to be fingers, on which rings matching the ones worn by the organization would appear. When one member died or removed their ring from their finger, Toby would know. Any member of Akatsuki could do this, but for some reason Toby did it the most, more than Pain. He grinned slightly, releasing the chakra that kept the jutsu active and formed the seals for Shunshin, moving so quickly that only the afterimage of a lone Sharingan eye was present. When Tsunade, Naruto, and company arrived at the mountain hideaway, they were relatively unshaken by their ordeal. Enko walked over when she noticed the new arrivals dispersing amongst the crowd, talking excitedly about their successful battle with Zetsu. "We've finished taking a census, Hokage-sama," she said by way of greeting. "We have all 35 genin and the 54 jounin, but only 24 chunin." "Sure mate," Tsunade cursed vehemently. "What about the civilian census?" Enko gulped. "We were reporting 10 casualty in the population." Tsunade sighed, and then straightened. "Well, that's 5 less casualties than the Sand Sound invasion, isn't it?" Enko stared, the death blow she was expecting undealt. "Hokage-sama?" Tsunade shook her head and smiled grimly. "We might as well be thankful for who survived, and grieve when the threat has passed." There hasn't been an action performed in this world that brought the dead back to life, she added poignantly. Enko-san, the voice shouted. It was revealed to belong to none other than Konohamaru. Enko-san, Hokage-sama. And Naruto and You're alive. Konohamaru said happily. Naruto sighed. I get no respect, he muttered in response to the latest incredulous response to his ability to survive. I respect you, Hinata said sweetly, pecking him on the cheek. Naruto turned slightly red. I don't, Haku said quickly, earning a black boot in the gut, which he dodged laughing. Naruto set his foot down pointedly and turned to Konohamaru. What's up, Konohamaru? Kakashi-sensei just left, he said hurriedly. He was telling us what the fighting was like out there, and then he suddenly stopped and went really pale. Then he formed a seal and poof. He was gone. Naruto looked puzzled. Without even saying where he was going? That's not like Kakashi-sensei, usually he comes up with some really crappy excuse. It's crap, but he always has one. Sakura nodded. We're all under the mountain, where could he have gone? There's a secret escape, it's only big enough for one person at a time, which is why it's kind of useless, but I'll bet he went up through there, Enko supplied. Moving at Shunshin speed? How is that even possible? Kira wondered aloud. Like this, Sasuke said suddenly, pointing at his activated Sharingan. When it gets to this level, the user can see things as if they were moving at normal speed while in Shunshin. How Kakashi-sensei managed to train himself to react without an Uchiha body is incredible, though. Naruto nodded. It is, not even I can react perfectly in Shunshin, so I rely on my Sharingan and my own speed. Haku has that ability from the demon he holds, so he's alright. Kira shook her head. What a crazy village you have here, such incredible abilities and powers. I miss the good old days, when all a ninja had were his stealth, his taijutsu, a trusty kunai, and a good kawarimi. Naruto looked at Kira oddly for a second. I've heard that somewhere before, he said softly, before turning to Tsunade. Shouldn't someone follow him? Then, another sudden arrival decided their next course of action. A small blue and brown blur shot out from the escape hole and shot towards them. Reacting with speed that made Tsunade swell with pride, Sakura snatched the blur and held it up, by the scruff of his neck. Let go of me. Oh, it's you, Pakken said when he realized who had grabbed him. Somehow he managed to twist around in midair to face the Godame. Tsunade, Kakashi found a member of Akatsuki and is in pursuit. There was a brief pause. Naruto, you and your team will follow Pakken to back Kakashi up. As for the rest of you, she added, shouting to address the mass of people who were present in the mountain. This is the end of the war for Konoha. I want every active ninja to report to me immediately for your next assignment. Now. HAI, the voices shouted, and there was a scuffle of activity. Tsunade watched for a moment before snagging Naruto's arm before he could follow his team into the tunnel. Naruto, she said softly. He looked her, steel and silver blue meeting hazel. He smiled. I know, Oba-chan. I'll back, and so will everyone else, he said reassuringly. She bopped him on the head. Baka, I only wanted you to make sure that the Kazekage returned alive. Naruto laughed as he turned to go, and Tsunade made sure to rub a hand across her eye before returning to the ninja now assembling before her. As Naruto fled the scene, a pair of Sharingan eyes watched them. Why hasn't anyone remembered me? Itachi thought grumpily as he got up from his conversation with the Chunin who guard the gate to Konoha and followed Naruto's team. I'm good in a fight, I'm Uchiha Itachi, for the sake of Kami-sama. He ran and crawled through the tunnel after Naruto's team, grumbling about the cramped space. Alright, now where the hell did Kakashi run off to? Naruto said grumpily. Haku raised a hand. It was a rhetorical question, Naruto began, but Haku shook his head. Give me a boost. was all he said as he pointed first to his stomach and then to his eyes. Naruto's face lit up like a 6-year-old's on Christmas morning. Perfect, he shouted, remembering Haku's ability of hawk sight. Naruto crouched down and made a cup out of his hands. Haku stepped onto it, and with a heave Naruto sent him flying up. And up. And up, until Haku had cleared the surrounding trees by an extra 100 feet. He twisted in midair, scanning the surrounding countryside until he began to descend onto the cloud of sand which Gaara had thoughtfully summoned. "Thanks, buddy," Haku said cheerfully as he righted himself on the ground. Gaara made a show of grunting about being called buddy, but everyone knew he liked it. "What did you see?" Naruto said, forestalling a potential outburst from Kira about the importance of expressing your feelings. Kakashi was pursuing a black-cloaked man. "If my eyes are as good as this Baka falcon tells me they are, they're heading for the Iwa Konoha border," Haku reported grimly. Kira smiled at that. "We've got nothing to worry about then," Kira said. "But Kakashi-san might, if he runs into anyone over the age of 40 on his way there," she added grimly. "Great," Naruto said. "How are we gonna catch up?" "Maybe I can help," Itachi said as he clambered out of the narrow escape hole. "Kyuso, but that was tighter than I thought." "Itachi-senpai," Naruto said in surprise. Where did you come from?" "Why are you here?" he asked with no small amount of confusion. Itachi bopped him on the head, showing no emotion on his face. "I dunno, I was sitting in the cave and I thought, how come I wasn't invited to hunt down the last member of the organization I infiltrated for years," he said dryly. "Just because I don't have a bijou doesn't mean I'm useless in a fight, ya bums," he added with a little humor. Naruto grinned sheepishly. "Don't have to tell me," he said under his breath, recalling his previous encounters with the elder prodigal Uchiha. Aloud, "So what's your idea?" he prompted Itachi, who nodded. "This is an interesting little jutsu I picked up over the years of training the Sharingan. It's something similar to Kakashi's Dimension Gate ability, only this one acts as a byway between 2 points in space. I won't bore you with the technical details, not that you'd understand them, but it essentially will take us closer to Kakashi and his target," Itachi explained, ignoring a predicted outburst from Naruto when he mentioned that he wouldn't understand the science behind the jutsu. "However, we can't instantaneously appear on the other side. A little time will pass." "Just a little, like a minute or so." "That still shortens the time like no tomorrow, pun intended," Kira confirmed. "Let's do it." Itachi sighed. If only it were that simple. He formed a sequence of 7 seals, ending on one only Haku recognized, having used it to activate certain jutsus of his own invention, and Naruto and his friends felt a surge of chakra, after which a circular hole in the air opened up before them. "Looked simple to me," Gaara said stoically as he stepped into the portal. Itachi resisted the urge to kick him as he went through and motioned the others forward. Soon they had all entered, and Itachi jumped in as well, mumbling "Kai" as he went and shutting the portal. Whoosh. 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 The trees whizzed by in a nondescript green blur, and Kakashi could care less. All he could see was the black-cloaked figure in front of him as he leapt from tree to tree. Suddenly, he stopped jumping. Kakashi followed suit to avoid getting too close to this mysterious individual. The man turned around to face Kakashi, and he was struck again by a feeling he couldn't identify. It was the same feeling that caused him to leap to his feet in the cavern back in Konoha and follow the chakra signature he sensed. He was nowhere nearer to identifying it, but the feeling was the same. "You deliberately flared your chakra," Kakashi reasoned as he puzzled it out in his head. "That's right," the man said cheerfully, almost childlike in his jubilee. "I flared it at just the right distance from you so that only you would detect it. Wouldn't want anyone interrupting," he added. Again, upon hearing the man's voice, Kakashi was struck by the feeling. Then, something strange happened, and the man's demeanor changed completely. Suddenly, Kakashi felt a new feeling, one that was very familiar to him. It was the feeling he got whenever he met someone with a most evil disposition, the kind of man with such malice and hatred in their hearts that it literally radiated from their person. He got that feeling from Orochimaru those years ago when he encountered the Sannin after sealing up Sasuke's curse seal. No, we cannot have any interruptions, the man said, and Kakashi noted that even his manner of speaking had changed. There are so many questions that need answering, Kakashi said as he stared at the spiraling orange mask on the man's face. The man laughed, quietly and with no mirth. You are right, there were, after all, many different factions within Akatsuki that all sought the means to their own end. For a time, those means were the same, and so the organization thrived. Upon acquiring the bijou, however, things began to fall apart, and I found that more direct methods of coercion were necessary to twist Akatsuki to my own will, the man said thoughtfully. Then he swiveled his head so that the hole in his mask faced Kakashi directly. I have the advantage over you, Kakashi, for as you see I know your name and yet you do not know mine, Toby said suddenly. Kakashi's eyes narrowed. My name is Toby. The feeling returned, accompanied by the unpleasant sensation that behind the hole in that mask was an eye, and it was staring directly at him. This shouldn't have been a bother, but for some reason the fact that this Toby person seemed to be trying to stare through him with his one eye was unsettling. Why the mask? Kakashi asked. Something to hide? Don't like having one eye? You know, you could just get a patch or something, Kakashi added. You are right, Toby said. Perhaps I should let you, and he reached up a hand to remove his mask. Kakashi lifted up his Hitai to reveal his three-dotted Sharingan eye. The man began to remove his mask, and Kakashi became aware of a surge of chakra some distance behind him. Then the mask came off, and Kakashi stopped breathing. His heart joined his lungs for a minute of respite before his brain, which was going into overload, reminded it to get a move on. Kakashi stared as the lone Sharingan eye of the man seemed to smile mockingly at him while Obito's mouth actually did so. Obito, Kakashi said dumbly. For there, standing in front of him wearing a black cloak with red clouds, a ring, and holding a spiraling orange mask, was his dead friend. How? Kakashi asked stupidly as he sunk to his knees on the tree branch he had commandeered. How could you possibly have? You never even searched for the body. Obito screamed, reserve gone. You found my visor and gave up, leaving with the eye I gave to you. My present, he yelled, and to Kakashi they were hammer blows. Obito took a deep breath. I was discovered by Deidara, who was on his way out of the country. He knew who I was, that is, he saw that I was an Uchiha. He was really young, so he picked me up and took me to a hermit's place where there lived a man skilled in healing jutsu. He fixed me up, I got up and left. When I realized that I had been abandoned, I swore that I would never return to Konoha again, he said bitterly. And you joined Akatsuki, Kakashi said numbly. Obito shook his head. No, I trained. I trained for years learning every technique I could, until Akatsuki found me. I knew an opportunity when I saw one and joined the organization, first as a humble grunt, then as a full member when Sasori died, Obito clarified. But Obito, we had no idea I've been mourning all this time. Rin went nuts without you and quit being a kunoichi. If you had come back if I had come back, what? Obito cut in. Pointless. There was nothing left for me there. Why did you do this, Obito? It's your home too, or at least it was. Kakashi demanded angrily. Ah yes, the villain's exposition, as they say, Obito said mockingly. Well, Pain had his reasons, I had mine. Pain simply wanted to control the ninja world through war and the power of the bijou, but I had a better idea, Obito said, and Kakashi saw that his eye began to spin. Pain wanted a world of war. Well, who fights wars? Shinobi and kunoichi, of course. Obito explained. So, if one really and truly wants to stop war, he trailed off, as if to invite Kakashi to come to the conclusion on his own. You'll simply kill all the ninja, using the power of the Bijou and Pain's clones to keep the peace as the only ones capable to fighting, Naruto said. Kakashi spun around, eyes widening as he saw who had arrived. Naruto, Kakashi said in surprise. Itachi, what are you? He began, but he stopped. You, Itachi said, staring directly at Obito. You're alive? Obito grinned. Surprised, Itachi? Itachi shook his head. Not really, they told us you were Kia, but that your body was never found. Bullshit, I thought. The man praised as the next Hokage takes a team out which included the son of the White Fang of Konoha, and they come back reporting a casualty but have no body to show for it. Huh. Itachi replied. Obito nodded. Good for you, he said sarcastically. Then he turned to Naruto, who glared. Obito studied him for a second, then gave Haku, Kira, and Gaara the same treatment before returning to Naruto. So you're the pathetic bastard who got the Kyubi sealed within him by the Yondaime, Obito said maliciously. Naruto was about to reply when he heard a voice that he had thought was gone forever. By all that is evil, Kyubi thought to Naruto. And here I thought I was rid of that man, what are you talking about? Naruto thought back excitedly. And what the hell? I thought you were gone. So did I, but it may have something to do with this guy, Kyubi replied. His chakra is almost identical to that Uchiha Madara who summoned me all those years ago, Naruto paled. But this is Kakashi-sensei's old teammate, I recognize him from a photo Kakashi-sensei showed me. Yeah, but I know chakra, Gaki, and it's almost the exact same chakra, Kyubi shot back. Naruto thought how this could be possible, reaching the inevitable conclusion. You're a direct descendant of Uchiha Madara, Naruto and Itachi said simultaneously, looking at the other as they realized they were repeating the other in classically cliched moment. Obito's eyes widened. Ah, so there are some who know the truth, he said incredulously. Though I doubt you came to that conclusion on your own, he said, indicating Naruto. I have a feeling my grandfather and your furry little friend go back a ways. Naruto's eyes narrowed. So it was this Uchiha Madara person who summoned the Kyubi to our world, he said calmly. Yes, Obito replied. Then he grinned. Come now, it's not that hard to put the pieces together, I still haven't told you what I had planned for Akatsuki. Obito howled as he watched the hapless Jinchuriki puzzle it out. You're the direct descendant of Uchiha Madara, Naruto muttered. Unconsciously, he brought his left hand to his stomach. What do you want with the Kyubi? Naruto said suddenly. Aha! Obito cried. The boy has found it. Quite a shinobi there, Kakashi. Naruto, what the hell is going on? Kira asked abruptly. Naruto turned to address Kira, Haku, and Gaara, all of whom were feeling extremely put out in the whole affair. This guy's ancestor summoned the Kyubi to this world for Kami-sama knows why, Naruto began. Typical maniac wants to destroy the world, if you ask me, Haku whispered to Kira on the side. She successfully suppressed a giggle but could not hold back the blush which mysteriously formed on her cheeks. Haku, for once, chose not to comment. And now I want him back. Obito said suddenly. He replaced his mask, then disappeared. He reappeared just as suddenly in front of Naruto, who had never seen anyone move so quickly. Without warning, he was staring into Obito's Sharingan eye, then all he could see was the cage where the Kyubi used to be sealed. The cage doors were gone and the Kyubi was nowhere to be found however, since Naruto had made a pact of sorts with the Kyubi years ago. Where is the Kyubi? Obito asked Naruto. Naruto turned, seemingly unsurprised that Obito had joined him in his mindscape. He and I are one, so to speak. I fully absorbed him, as was the intent of the pact with the Shinigami my father, Uzumaki Erasure, made. Not much gonna stand in the way of anything the Shinigami sets in motion, you know? Naruto said looking to where the Kyubi used to be. Obito turned to him, and Naruto almost recoiled. By all that is, what the his chakra is so evil, he thought. Just like Uchiha Madara's kid, I gotta tell ya, I don't think you're gonna like what happens next, Kyubi interjected. Fine, Obito said. It was only a mass of chakra to be extracted from you anyway, which I can achieve just as easily from your body in its last breath. But for now, he said, and formed a seal. Naruto could only watch as Obito's Sharingan began to spin around, then for a brief moment formed a five-pointed star. Naruto felt a tug at the very core of his soul which was extremely painful. It was followed by a feeling as if someone was pulling him up by his collar. The real world came back so quickly Naruto had to gasp for breath. Naruto! Sasuke yelled as the blonde stumbled. Naruto looked up to see Sasuke's Sharingan spinning just as quickly as Obito's had been. Sasuke? Naruto said, straightening. Thanks for the save, but what are you doing here? Sasuke grinned. I was following an Isan over there. He'll never admit it, but my Sharingan is stronger than his, Sasuke said, his grin becoming a smirk, so I figured I'd lend a hand. I can still beat you, Itachi warned, the corners of his mouth twitching. Sasuke shrugged. But I guess you're all glad I came, he said, taking in the crowd and returning his attention to his best friend. Like I'd let you fight this one without me, he added. Naruto took a step towards Obito, who had jumped back to the branch he had stopped on before. Looks like your little trick failed, he asserted, his confidence restored by the reliable Sasuke. Obito smiled. As powerful and versatile as the Sharingan is, it cannot compare to the specialties of the Sharingan. As my grandfather did before me, so now I have done, the powers of the Kyubi are now sealed away. And since you have absorbed him, it's as if your very soul is sealed away. You are helpless. Obito yelled triumphantly. Naruto's silver and blue eyes widened. He turned to his friends behind him, ready to remind Obito of just who his friends were, when he stilled and his jaw dropped. His friends were out cold. Gaara lay slumped against a tree, and Haku had apparently caught Kira before passing out himself. Seeing as how Haku had fallen on his side, Kira wrapped protectively in his arms. What happened to them? Naruto yelled. Obito shrugged. I would guess the splash from the technique caught them and carried them with it, and their bijou simply couldn't stand the repression. Obito said cheerfully as he formed a seal. Sure mate. Itachi yelled. Naruto recognized it too. Itachi, isn't that the seal you used to dash? Was all Naruto got out before the world shifted around them once again, and Naruto, Sasuke, Itachi, and Kakashi suddenly found themselves at the Valley of the End. Their positions were just so that the Sharingan wielders and Naruto found themselves standing on the head of the statue of the Shodaime, while Obito capped the carving of Uchiha Madara. He surveyed the valley, then turned to his opponents. Someone really went nuts around here, he remarked, gazing at the eroded craters and gaps where chunks of stone were blown away from the respective statues. Sasuke chuckled, thinking how true that statement was. You don't know the half of it, he said aloud, cracking his knuckles. Enough of this, it's time to correct some past mistakes, Kakashi said abruptly. Then he launched himself across the gap between the statues, and Naruto couldn't help but see the similarity between the two of them and what they fought for at the Valley of the End. Nice place for a final battle, Naruto said offhandedly to Sasuke as Kakashi and Obito began trading taijutsu combos. Naruto noticed that Kakashi had shifted his Hitai to cover his normal eye so that only his Sharingan was showing. Suddenly, Kakashi sailed over the edge of the statue and plowed into the ground. Itachi, Sasuke, and Naruto stared as one of the most powerful shinobi they knew had his ass handed to him too quickly. I know all your moves, Kakashi. And you never understood that a fight needs to be as quick as possible. Obito shouted down to Kakashi as he tried to do something about the ground that was rushing up at him. Sasuke Otuto, Itachi said. Yeah, and I-san? Sasuke replied as he readied himself. We've got some family matters to attend to, Itachi said mock formally, and as one the Uchiha brothers launched themselves at Obito, who settled into a stance, Black Cloak whipping about in the wine. They came at him together, but Obito caught their fists, where they struggled at impasse for a while before Itachi jumped back and threw some kunai at Obito's head. Ignoring the kunai, Obito flipped his grip on Sasuke's fist to his forearm and flung him in the direction of the projectiles and right into Itachi's intention. Sasuke caught the missiles and added the force of his midair spin to their speed as he flipped around and launched them again for Obito's head. They impacted his skull, and one poof of smoke later revealed a rock with 3 kunai embedded up to the circle in the handle. Naruto watched as Obito reappeared on the ground next to the river and sprinted to the side in order to dodge the water dragon from Kakashi's Suiton Jutsu. Sasuke and Itachi jumped off the statue of Uchiha Madara and formed seals as one, releasing simultaneous Kakakyo jutsus and launching 2 great balls of flame towards Obito, who didn't hesitate as he quickly escaped the blast area, parrying Kakashi's blows as he did so. The Uchiha brothers hit the ground and Obito found himself pressed by 3 attackers at once, though neither Kakashi nor Sasuke nor Itachi could land a hit on the agile Obito. "I want to fight," Naruto said as he tried to gather his chakra. However, even his normal chakra seemed bounded by the effects of Obito's attack. "Kyuso, I have to break through this." What did he do? What could he have possibly done? "I want to ask Itachi or Sasuke, but if I get too close without being able to dodge, I won't last long enough. Damn it, Kyubi, speak to me." But there was no answer. Meanwhile, Obito had managed to summon some water clones in the heat of the fistfight to even the odds somewhat. While not too dangerous to any of the Konoha shinobi, neither could they be left alone. They too ducked and weaved in the Uchiha style of taijutsu, and Sasuke, Itachi, and Kakashi were hard-pressed to keep up with them and Obito. Suddenly, Itachi whipped through some seals and shouted, "Katan, Housenka no Jutsu," and spat forth several small fireballs. Obito wasted no time and saw through the technique with ease. Forming seals and shouting, "Futon, Kamaitashi," Obito whipped his hands forward and launched several sickle-shaped blasts of wind, then deflected the shuriken hidden in the technique with a kunai. He then charged Sasuke, who was fighting a water clone. Sensing the impending doom, he ducked at the last minute. Obito pulled up short to avoid impaling his own clone, but it exploded into harmless water anyways as Sasuke brought his sword Kusanagi through its legs. Completing the spin, he pivoted on one foot in a sweep, which Obito seemed to ripple over with ease. As he came down, Sasuke allowed himself a small grin as his sword pushed through Obito's leg as it came down, which promptly burst into water, dispelling the clone. Kakashi, who saw that Sasuke was occupying Obito, took the time to dispel the Mizu Bunshins that his old friend had summoned. When the last one he was fighting seemed to waver in midair, he passed it off as an optical illusion. What he didn't see with his Sharingan was that Obito had used the Kawarimi Jutsu simultaneously with his clone to switch places. Kakashi realized this when his fist connected with the shoulder of the clone. It didn't dispel, and Obito used the moment of shock to plunge 2 pairs of kunai into Kakashi's arms. Itachi cursed as he kicked Obito in the side of the head, too late to stop the immobilization of Kakashi's arms. With a hiss of pain, Kakashi leapt backwards to take Itachi's place in fighting the remaining 2 Mizu Bunshins. Sasuke slashed one through with his katana, taking advantage of Obito's momentary inability to directly control his clones. Instead of dodging the slash, it blocked with an arm and was dispelled. Kakashi also took one by surprise. By propelling himself backwards and then pivoting on one foot, the clone was able to dodge the kick he sent but not a windmilling arm which caught it in the side of the head with enough power to turn the clone to water. Itachi fought better than he ever had before, in his own opinion. Mixing taijutsu with his rapid formation of seal sequences, he was able to throw in a few ninjutsu techniques as well. But without his genjutsu, the advantage was held by Obito, who seemed to have trained in nothing but taijutsu and ninjutsu. His taijutsu was lightning fast and he hit extremely hard, and his ability to predict and counter every ninjutsu Itachi knew was unsettling. Obito's Sharingan didn't make things any worse either. Out came Itachi's right fist, then the left, then a front snap kick. Obito blocked all with ease until the kick, which he chose to make his move. With unnatural speed, his body suddenly flared with dark crimson chakra, and he sidestepped Itachi's kick and caught it. Moving too quickly for Itachi to react, Obito locked the leg and pushed downward. Itachi found himself slammed into the ground, almost in the style of wrestling. Then he stopped thinking about how the move had removed all air from his body and thought about how to avoid the cone of fire which was now erupting from inside of Obito's mouth. Suddenly, Obito halted the attack and jumped to the side. Itachi also moved as a hail of kunai fell from the sky. Obito looked in the direction they came from and saw Naruto spinning and twirling, and from his body came small black projectiles. Obito grinned. The Kyubi child's resourcefulness was not to be contested as he dodged and weaved through the hail of kunai. Sasuke took advantage of the opportunity to motion to Kakashi, who nodded and helped Sasuke assist Itachi in getting away from Obito. "He's too good," Itachi huffed as they staggered away, making use of the distraction Naruto was providing. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," he added, noting that Kakashi and Sasuke were also breathing heavily on the banks of the river in the valley. Now that he's unleashing the bijou he has, the only explanation for that fire without any seals or the Sharingan, I don't know if we can still beat him. Kakashi nodded. "We've got to end this now," he declared, straightening. "Sasuke-kun, Itachi-san, follow my lead." He yanked the kunai out of his arms and straightened them despite the pain. "I probably only have one shot at this anyways." Gathering his chakra, he formed and molded it into the Chidori, and Sasuke followed suit. Itachi watched them both for a moment, and then performed the technique perfectly. "Nice," Kakashi commented. Itachi grinned humorlessly, and they took off for Obito as the kunais ceased to fall. As they ran, Sasuke couldn't help but notice a familiar seal wrapping on all the handles of the kunai. Naruto watched as the trio attacked Obito simultaneously with the Chidori technique. "Damn it," he cursed loudly. "I want to fight. Damn it, Kyubi, where the hell is my chakra?" Then Naruto remembered one of Jiraiya's lessons from those years he spent wandering the ninja world with the perverted hermit. "Naruto, there's something I want to teach you," Jiraiya began. They were seated on a boat which was drifting lazily down a canal in the middle of a densely populated area. "Yeah?" Naruto said rudely. "And what's that, oh great and powerful Erosenin?" Jiraiya, despite the insult, just laughed. "It's a technique that will help you against genjutsu, seeing as how you have no talent in that area whatsoever." "Awesome!" Naruto yelled excitedly. Jiraiya had proceeded to explain how one could cut off the flow of chakra to his central nervous system, thus releasing any hold an illusion would have on him. "That's really cool," Naruto said. "There's more," Jiraiya added, capturing Naruto's attention once again. He sat attentively as Jiraiya collected his thoughts on how to present this without giving anything away that Naruto didn't need to hear just yet. "Remember how Niji sealed your chakra away in the Chunin exam and you powered through it with the Kyubi's chakra?" Jiraiya said suddenly, surprised by his own ingenuity. "Yeah, that sucked. It was as if my entire being was locked away, and Niji had swallowed the key," Naruto recalled, shuddering. "Well, what do you think you can do if someone manages to, say, seal away all of your chakra, including the Kyubi's?" Jiraiya asked seriously. Naruto thought about what he had just been taught. "I dunno, I suppose I could try that genjutsu thingy. But how would that help if there's no chakra to cut off?" Jiraiya smiled. "Don't be so sure, because of your tenet, your body is a little different than others. If you try to break a genjutsu when your chakra is sealed and focus really hard on that point of separation, my theory is that your mind will summon that cage place you keep telling me about. Maybe something can happen there that will help you there," he added. Then he chuckled. "Or this could be a load of bullshit. Either way, it'll be worth it for you to try it if you're ever screwed like that." Jiraiya said as he howled with laughter. "Jiraiya-sensei," Naruto said, wiping away a tear. It's as if you knew the whole time, Naruto said softly as he focused on breaking the flow of chakra to his brain where no chakra existed. And suddenly, he was standing before the cage of the Kyubi, and this time it was inhabited by a large orange-red nine-tailed fox. Gaki, the fox said by way of greeting. Naruto only stared. What's happening, was all he could say, noticing the red chakra that was pressing against the gate. The Kyubi chuckled. I'm gonna do what I did all those years ago, so help me Kami-sama. I'm gonna give you all my chakra, reversing what that bastard of an Uchiha did to me. He thinks he stopped me, but no one can cage the Lord of the Demons, he huffed, pointedly ignoring the fact that the Yondaime had done just that. But this time, it'll really be goodbye. We will never speak again, not that I care, the Kyubi huffed, looking off to the side. Naruto knew better, and smiled. I will always remember you, you big stupid furball, even though you did give me hell every now and then. The Kyubi snorted. I am the lord of all the demons, that's my job, Uzumaki Naruto. Farewell, and I'll see you whenever you happen to cross over to the other side. Then with a roar, the Kyubi slammed against the cage's bars. As soon as he made contact with the bars, he dissipated entirely into the red bubbly chakra which rushed through the cage and swarmed into Naruto. Once again, he was thrust into the real world with a gasp as all his chakra, which rivaled the Kyubi's, plus the Kyubi's demonic nature, rushed back into him as if from a floodgate. He felt powerful, like the first time he had called upon the Kyubi's chakra with his own will in the Chunin exam final against Niji. He closed his fists experimentally, and began by assessing the situation. Unfortunately, he had missed what happened, but he could guess by the fact that, since Sasuke was standing on the water with a wound on his shoulder, Kakashi was kneeling far away and panting, and Itachi was standing erect but clutching his side. Obito had repelled the attacks and had actually managed to land blows on each of the other Sharingan wielders. However, he had failed to notice one thing. All of the kunai Naruto had thrown were specially prepared. They were all perfectly normal except Naruto had used his Sharingan to permanently engrave the seal of the Hiraishin no Jutsu on the handles of each, almost unnoticeable, especially in the head of combat. He grinned and formed a one-handed ram seal. You see, I am the possessor of the eight-tailed dragon, Obito explained, indicating the dark red chakra that enveloped his person. You have no chance against me, he explained to Kakashi and Itachi as he stalked towards them. Don't let your guard down, Sasuke warned as he leapt for Obito, sword gleaming against the water. Just before Sasuke would have impaled him, Obito spun and dodged the blade by a hair's breadth. It sliced through his cloak, but in return Sasuke was stabbed viciously to the hilt of the kunai in his right shoulder, rendering him useless as his momentum carried him past Obito and almost to the edge of the forest that bordered the Valley of the End. He tumbled end over end until coming to a halt, grimacing with pain. Tut, 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 Obito said with mock disappointment. Is this all Konohagakure can offer these days? Two Sharingan wielders already out of the fight, unable to use any jutsu, and all I have left to face are a fallen Uchiha and a kid who has no chakra left. A pity, he remarked as he continued to walk towards Itachi, who for the first time in his life since the Uchiha massacre was at a loss for what to do as Obito walked slowly towards him. Itachi noticed for no reason at all that his next step took him directly 1 meter away from one of the kunai that Naruto had flung from that impressive distance. Then Obito could only watch as Naruto appeared before him in a flash of light and punched him right in the nose, sending him cartwheeling backwards to tumble and roll on the ground for a few meters before he righted himself on his feet and skidded to a halt. Amazing, he whispered as he tapped his nose, pleased that it wasn't even bleeding thanks to the chakra of the eight-tailed Ryu. The Hiraishin no Jutsu, I couldn't even see a glimpse of it, as if I was still viewing it with my normal eyes. Naruto let out a slow breath as orange chakra began to wrap itself in a sort of armor around his body. He straightened from his lunge punch and slowly drew Makai from its sheath and leveled it at Obito. You have harmed my friends and threatened my village with destruction. Oh, and you want me dead till you can control the Kyubi. Well, I've got news. I'm not sealed anymore because the Kyubi's gone. He sacrificed his life in this world to transfer all his chakra to me, You have no purpose anymore, Naruto declared, swinging Makai to his side. Obito stared, scanning Naruto through his mask's only eye hole. He's right. May Kami-sama burn for eternity, but he's right. No. Well, then as a token prize I will kill you and these pathetic excuses for Uchiha, then I will wipe out the rest of your village. And then, this world will burn by the flames from my hand, Obito yelled suddenly, and Naruto got the feeling that Obito no longer had anything to lose, making him that more dangerous. However, Sasuke smirked as he watched Naruto twitch involuntarily. One thing you should never do is threaten Konohagakure in front of Naruto, Kakashi finished for him. Itachi simply looked on with glee, noticing the rage spilling of Naruto in waves. Naruto's eyes widened and he shook his head slightly. Don't threaten my village, scum. Obito laughed manically. Stop me if you can then, Naruto-kun, he retorted maniacally, prepared for anything the boy could throw at him. But there was one technique Obito could never copy or predict with his Sharingan. Whenever it was used, he either hadn't activated high Dojutsu or his view was obstructed by, say, a pile of rubble. And once wasn't enough to really analyze a jutsu which summoned the power of a flying thunder god. Naruto began to punch towards Obito, and then flashed away to appear right in front of him. Caught off guard once again, Obito was propelled backwards by the attack, though before he even landed Naruto was moving again. Flashing a bit closer, Naruto leapt off the ground under Obito in a sword charge. Obito tried to prepare a defense, and would have been successful if Naruto had continued his path. Yet again he flashed and Obito slammed a chakra-reinforced foot down on the ground. He launched his center of gravity upward. Combined with the momentum from Naruto's fist, Obito's foot had turned his fall into a backflip which carried his head just over the tip of Naruto's finely made and glowing katana. As he completed the flip he whipped out two kunai and as he landed back on his feet he dug into the ground to keep from crashing into the forest behind him. Naruto recovered from his charge and disappeared again without warning. But this time, something seemed different to Obito. I still can't see him move, he realized, but I can still react to his normal movement when the jutsu stops. He quickly scanned the ground, now recognizing the familiar kunai his old sensei had used to win the Iwa Konoha War. Naruto reappeared behind Obito and slightly to his left, a perfect strike point. Obito dodged the blade as it came down, using the kunai as a double guard. Not wasting half a second, Naruto growled and flashed again, but this time Obito was more than ready. When Naruto reappeared to the right of Obito, he was greeted by a kunai to the face. Reacting faster than he ever had while using his demonic chakra nature, Naruto flashed a seal with the Sharingan and Kawarimiya away from Obito, replacing himself with a rock. Obito's kunai blasted through it, and he turned to face Naruto, who stood at the ready, albeit slightly more aggravated. He flashed, and Obito correctly predicted where he would strike, blocking Makai as it came down on his right shoulder and sliding his kunai along the blade to strike at Naruto. Naruto twisted the katana and disengaged. Obito immediately began to focus on Naruto's next activation of the jutsu. And almost got his arm cut off. Naruto, instead of predictably activating the Hiraishin no Jutsu again, had simply used his incredible speed and training with Tenten to attack again, slicing upwards at Obito's arm. Obito dodged but didn't escape and scathed and Makai cut a gash in his shoulder. The two ceased movement for a moment, observing the other. Obito grinned. You're about to discover one of the powers of the eight-tailed dragon, Obito said as he watched his wound. Regeneration. Naruto laughed. Kyubi's is faster, and besides, this blade has a special vendetta towards the powers of a bijou, which is why your shoulder isn't healing right now. Obito simply smirked, and Naruto watched in horror as the Uchiha's wound knitted together again, albeit slower than Obito was used to. He took advantage of Naruto's momentary stupefaction and charged forward, slamming a kick to the blonde's chin, who could only turn the fall into a flip and skidded backwards. Idiot boy, if that sword were so powerful your father would have survived, Obito said snidely, gesturing at the blade. My guess is that you've only ever used it on lesser-tailed bijou than my own. It doesn't work so well on the likes of me. Naruto stared at the blade, then resheathed it and tossed it in the air, where he stared at it for a minute, tossing a scroll up to join it. Shooting a seal at the two, he used his Sharingan to seal the sword in the scroll and caught it as it descended, tucking it away into his weapon's pouch. Then we'll have to see just what more tails means, Naruto replied softly, though Obito could hear every word. Not letting Naruto get in the first move, he charged his body with the chakra of the eight-tailed dragon, feeling the fire and the power coursing through his veins. The boy, and then the world, wouldn't know what hit him. Naruto stared for a moment, analyzing the changes in Obito's chakra system with the Sharingan, and then formed a seal. "Kai!" he shouted, and a shockwave pulsated out from him. His fangs elongated and his nails became slightly longer, sharper, and Naruto was sure, stronger. He also felt his eyes shift uncomfortably, and he glanced at the massive river to his left and noticed that his Sharingan was now dark red. Without even checking, he knew his whisker marks were elongated as well. Must be the effect of absorbing the Kyubi completely, he thought as he flexed his claws experimentally. Then he summoned the rest of the change. Obito stared as the 9 tails of orange chakra exploded out of Naruto and hovered menacingly about his person. "Now, it's my turn." Obito whipped through a seal sequence and ended on Tiger. "Katan, Kuchios no Jutsu," he yelled in a voice not unlike a roar, and he flung his hands out away from his body, palms facing outward. Oh shit, Naruto thought. He can summon the very element of fire. Obito's jutsu summoned forth flames from the very air, but they were different from the usual Katan jutsu. These flames were hotter, brighter, and stronger than any Naruto had ever seen, like a dragon's should be. The flames danced around Obito in a circle, and then some formed into 7 clones while the rest wrapped around his forearms and lower legs. The clones didn't even assume Obito's shape and simply appeared as if humans had spontaneously combusted. As one they turned to Naruto, who crouched. They leapt at him like lightning, swinging around to his right in an effort to flank him. It worked, and Naruto was forced to fight while water walking, stabbing and cutting at the clones with his tails. But as fast as he was, the clones were faster. Maybe he can't come onto the water because of the flames. No, that's stupid, he thought angrily as he fended off a jet of flame from one of the creatures by batting at it with a tail of chakra, noticing that the Hobunshins were unaffected by the water and could seemingly walk on it at will. Even with the Sharingan, his demonic chakra, and the speed and reflexes he worked for years to attain, he was hard-pressed to keep up with the clones. Then Obito stepped into the game, running at Naruto and chopping at him with his fire-encased arms. Every time he kicked or slashed at Naruto, the flames on his arm would extend and increase the range of the attack. Naruto was forced to literally divide up his tails amongst the 7 clones, using 2 to defend against Obito while he used his hands and feet to spin and flip about on the surface of the water, grateful for the walking on water with hands training. But he could tell that the fight was progressing in Obito's favor. "I can't keep this up," Naruto cursed as he failed to get a tail in front of him and simply ducked under Obito's fist, flames singing his hair and igniting his ponytail. He jumped and rotated in midair, flinging his tails in a circle and pushing the clones back, also taking the opportunity to dip his hair in the water and put the flames out. Obito and his Bunshins were only held back for a second before rushing back in. "I can't use a seal for my Sharingan," he decided as he managed to land a hit on a clone. It wasn't visibly affected, but its movement began to slow and Naruto was able to strike a tail through its head and dispel it. However, instead of the flames disappearing, they were distributed amongst the other clones and Obito, increasing their speed and likely their power as well, though Naruto wasn't inclined to find out the hard way. "Riding a seal with the Sharingan would use up too much chakra, and I can't concentrate," he thought grumpily as he was forced out of his musings to defend against a simultaneous attack from the remaining clones and Obito. "I'm slowing down," he realized as he almost missed a parry with his tails, Obito's right almost impacting his face and likely ending his life despite the amount of demonic chakra. He rolled around the fist of fire, bringing his tails in together and thrusting out with all nine at Obito, ignoring the bunshins momentarily. Obito was forced to bring both flame arms in to block and was flung backwards towards the waterfall, buying Naruto some time. I need help, he thought. But it was too late, and Naruto was hit in the back with a fist powered by the demonic flames of the crazed Uchiha. He screamed as the pain hit, fiercer than anything he had ever felt before. He flew forwards, slamming into the side of the Shodaime side cliff and brought down a small avalanche. Obito smiled as he led the final charge towards the dazed Hokage to be. Itachi looked up from his work at staunching the blood flow from the now unconscious Kakashi and Sasuke and paled. This is the end, he thought as Obito brought a fist back. Then Obito was swept away by a massive wave which enveloped him and left him suspended in midair. The sand which held him began to squeeze, so he flared his fire nature chakra, scorching the sand to glass and dropped to the water's surface. He looked up in the direction of the attack and scowled, eyes widening and reflecting the madness within. On the head of the Shodaime stood a red-haired girl, a black-haired boy, and a brown-haired boy whose hand was outstretched and from whom the sand came. Naruto-kun! Kira shouted down. Hang in there, she added as she jumped down the cliff face to assist him. Haku jumped off the head and dived, forming his chakra into its ice nature. Yeah, I won't want to stay in Konoha for long if you can't become Hokage, 'cause you're dead, he shouted as he dove for Obito, wind whipping about him. Obito jumped back as Haku hit. His clones followed suit, but one was caught in the impact and annihilated, the flames circling back to the rest. I do not think that Suna would be pleased to learn of the Rokuden to be's death, Gaara said monotonously as he floated down to Naruto, who stared at his dumbly. I refuse to return home with news of your death. Temari and Kankuro would be most displeased, he added, the corners of his mouth twitching as he thrust his hands forward, launching the special sand from his gourd towards Obito. Naruto stared at them as they assaulted Obito and his clones. You guys, he said, choking on the words. Thank you will suffice, Kira said happily as she landed on the water next to Naruto. I'm sure Hinata-chan wouldn't want you to forget your manners, she called back, already racing to engage in battle, Haku following swiftly behind. Naruto shook his head as he too ran forward and began to strike and block the creatures of fire. My friends, I will never forget this, Naruto vowed softly as he pierced a clone with 5 tails while defending with the others. Ah, that's sweet, Haku said to Kira jokingly as he formed a seal in one hand and raised his other, bringing forth spikes of ice from the river. The remaining clones, so close to the icy chill of the Jinchuriki, could not defend and were destroyed. Only Obito remained, though his power was no longer split amongst the clones. He didn't say anything, just glared murderously at Naruto and his companions. Kira frowned and prepared her chakra for a jutsu, Gaara raised his sand, and Naruto arched his tails. Haku smiled sadly. Follow my lead, he said straightening. Then he launched himself towards Obito, brining back a shard of ice as if to plunge it into Obito's mask. Naruto and Kira charged the Uchiha, and Gaara sent forth his sand, ready to follow up on Haku's attack. The attack never landed, and the flames that erupted from Obito's mouth caught him straight on, enveloping his body with a sickening roar as it descended onto Obito. The flaming boy wrapped his arms around Obito and held tight, despite the pain that literally scorched through his skin. Haku! Naruto roared, but his voice emerged from the flames. Do it now. Hating himself, hating the world, and hating Obito, Naruto plunged his tails like daggers into Obito's body. Numbly he realized that Kira's extended fingers had hit his solar plexus and Gaara's sand had crushed his head. The body racked itself in midair, suspended by the 3 blows, then fell limp. Kira retreated from the body, shuddering slightly. Gaara retracted his sand and gathered Haku's charred form from the water with his sand, struggling because of the dampness, and wrapped it in a cocoon of sand. Itachi approached the body from across the water. Naruto stared at it, unable to see Itachi, and was surprised when black flames appeared from nowhere and ignited the corpse, which melted and then evaporated into nothing. Satisfied, Itachi slumped, and Naruto turned and caught him, holding him up. That was the last of my chakra for the day, Itachi said weakly. Naruto nodded weakly, turning to follow Kira and Gaara on their way back to the riverside where Sasuke and Kakashi were coming to. As he reached the bank, he heard someone faintly calling his name and turned back to the statue of the Shodaime, where stood Tsunade, Hinata, their friends, and a small army of Konoha Chunin. Turning his gaze to the Valley of the End itself, he surveyed the carnage they had wrought and felt his heart collapse under the emotional onslaught which mirrored the new craters and scorch marks which now accompanied the previous ones along the cliffs of the river. He stumbled over to where Sasuke and Kakashi and the others had congregated around Haku's blackened form, and before he knew it Tsunade had knelt down beside Haku and was running green glowing hands along his body while Kira and Gaara looked on, Kira openly weeping and inching towards their friend's form, and Gaara motionless save for his eyes, in which Naruto could see the old and terrible pain of loneliness reflecting outwards. He felt Hinata's arms encircle his waist from behind, and he settled into her, allowing her to support him. His tears fell to the earth in earnest alongside the rain which had begun to fall.